Do we think it's do we think that a who will be the more easily defeated Republican candidate for Joe Biden to go up against? Like, is Joe Biden? Do we want the threat of another specifically Trump presidency, or do we want it to be opened up to like, but it's but a Republican could do it better. I think we need Trump to run, because I think a Biden or a Harris is going to be way too vulnerable just to the swings of partisanship. I think you need the threat of somebody as shitty as Trump to actually get you through.
Yeah, this is a very complicated question. I mean, and it's like complicated morally. It's complicated the way I weigh it, because like, okay, part of me goes, the appropriate strategy in a primary, like if I was going to go and vote in the Republican primary, the appropriate strategy for me to do is go and do harm mitigation, to go in and vote for the least aberrant Republican I can think of on that ticket who has the chance of winning the nomination. And so if it's not, because Trump like openly violated the Constitution and like lies about election results in a way that, like, obviously I think Ron DeSantis is a piece of shit, but I don't think he'd like lie that he won the election. Well, actually, him probably. But like, you know, like Mitt Romney, absolutely not. So if it's Romney or Trump, let's use that for my example here. My moral responsibility, as far as I see it, you got to go and vote for Romney. Now, when I wind this back and I go, who do I think has a better chance of beating Joe Biden? I think a guy like Mitt Romney has an infinitely better chance of beating Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
Than rewound, now old Donald Trump, who was wrong as fuck on COVID, who like we saw what 4 years of him was like. He's not quote unquote something new. He's more of the same. And I think that thing, it is very like, that's very appealing on one level, because I really, as strong as he is, as tough as he is in certain aspects, the idea of Donald Trump, the new flavor in town, that's gone. And I don't think he can beat Joe Biden. I don't think he can make the case that he can do it better than Joe Biden, because I think Americans have decided in a very strong way, even if you want to talk about the Electoral College, that's a different thing. Look at the popular vote as a starting position. We have a good sample size of what like Americans think of Joe Biden, hypothetically even, versus Donald Trump in practice. So when they're going to vote for Joe Biden in practice against Donald Trump in practice, as middling as the Biden presidency is, and I have many problems with it, I have a hard time going, Americans go, in practice, Joe Biden is actually worse than Donald Trump. I think they're still going to be on that side of the ledger. And while I think there'd be some slippage, I also don't think I'm just ready for something new, dumb argument that gets made to the swing dependents will be able to get made with the same degree of efficacy, because you know that Donald Trump is not something new. He was actually something old. And if you've now gotten the vaccine, which over 50% of Americans have, and you're someone who's gotten the vaccine and is slightly concerned that other people aren't getting the vaccine, you probably, to some degree, internally, you don't say it like out loud like that, but like if you actually had to like write it out for 2 or 3 paragraphs, not that anyone would ever make you do that, you probably blame Donald Trump for that on some level.
Well, yeah, Trump, January 6th moved the Republican base in a way that I don't think we've really unpacked yet, because they may be against like defunding the police or Black Lives Matter, but that's because they're heavily law and order. And seeing Trump's people try to interrupt an election by storming the Capitol is going to move the needle for some of those people and make a Trump win in a general election a really tough uphill fight. Because if you're a law and order Republican, like you're gonna see 6 months of attack ads of people storming the Capitol.
Yeah, that's going to be agony, right? Like and that's the other thing. If you're Democrats, you almost want them to win the nomination, because there are a lot of these civility types, the Tea Party type, like, the Matt Lewises of the world, who really don't want to go back to 1-6, and in their guts know that Donald Trump is a portal back to that. And the only way to ever close the door on that in their lifetime before they're like really old is going to be to shut the door on him for good here in this upcoming general election.
That's actually all of the monsters that we really distinctly want to stay out of power. I don't think Donald Trump can actually be he birthed them. He gave them their banner, or they glommed onto his, but I don't think he can actually be that avatar anymore. Like I'm more scared of a Mitt Romney getting in and then completely, like, those people are still there in the party infrastructure and him just completely losing control of it again. Like they're like a much more centrist, much more reasonable Republican, essentially Trojan horsing in these goofballs because they're not going away.
No, they can't. And they've shown that they can't control their base. If they could control Paul Gosar, if they could control Marjorie Taylor Greene, if they could control Matt Gaetz, for the love of God, if they could control Matt Gaetz, because he's actually making the power plays and he's evil. He's the millennial Roy Moore. I'm not like strange new respect for Matt Gaetz. But Matt Gaetz is assembling a little power base for himself right now. And you'd be a damn fool to sleep on it. This Free Britney thing, you could say it's cynical. It is cynical. But it has a certain trade with middle America who grew up listening to Britney Spears and liking Britney Spears music. And this millennial guy, this guy who is under 40 or right around the age of 40, is out there fighting on behalf of something that they sort of care about, even if it's of, nominal utility politically speaking. But moreover, it's not like we're on the show saying, don't free Britney. Like, he's actually picking a cause that, like, doesn't have, like, liberal opposition to it either. Like, he's being really, really smart about this and charming public opinion.
But one of the things about being a populist rather than being popular is seeing where the herd is going and getting in front of it.
And that was the thing I always thought Trump was going to be good at. And actually, to a certain extent, like, Matt Gaetz is in certain ways proving to be better at. He's right on marijuana. He knows, like, he is way to the left of his party on marijuana. And that's entirely because he knows where the people are on marijuana, and he knows it's a safe position for him to take. He's, to the left of his party on this Britney Spears thing. And, that's because he's in tune with where people are. Like, what's scary about Matt Gaetz in a weird way, I would never call him Huey Long. But like, never, like, not ever, not ever, never call him Huey Long. But like, he gets populism in a way that is much closer to like actual populism than what everyone always said. Oh, Trump's really good at it. And I guess part of like why we, like, outflanking tanks always got so silly is because like Trump never actually did the swing to the left stuff. Gaetz,
he was also not like, Trump's not like a normal person. Like he was a like this queenie, like vaguely aristocratic guy, like his son of a landlord. He's been rich his entire life. Like Matt Gaetz, not that like I don't know that much about his backstory, but I doubt he was the son of a real estate magnate. So he has some conception of what like a normal person could like, whereas like Trump
look at Trump's fashion, like look at Trump's sense of aesthetics, like and tell me that this man is in touch with the common man. Look at all of our apartments, or all of our domiciles here in this shot here, and like then go and look at like the Trump Tower setup, which, oh, by the way, he's had for 40 years, and tell me that he's in touch with the common man. Because like Trump Tower now, especially like his quarters, looks basically the same as it did in the 80s. I mean, he's not in touch with where Americans are today. Like, there are certain ways where he like talks like Archie Bunker, and that gives him a bit of a populist tinge for sure. Don't get me wrong. He talks much more like the average American, but like there are very clear and obvious ways where it's like, he's not like you. And like, what makes me really worried. He would
be disgusted by you.
What makes me worried is a politician who actually much better gets how to be like you. And Matt Gaetz seems like that kind of guy, sort of. Or Matt Gaetz, I guess, and maybe not even he's that sort of guy. Matt Gaetz gives me flashes of what that kind of guy looks like, and it scares me.
Yeah. That's, anybody who can who can Trojan horse, like who can get back in without being as vulgar as Trump was, is going to be so dangerous. Like I'm not excited about it.
The one thing I think that maybe favors the Republicans, here's the other thing though. They got to run Trump, right? Because like Trump actually got the turnout numbers up, and I have real doubts for their turnout numbers if they actively sabotage Trump. Like you'd have to, like Trump would have to
he has to step away and hand it over.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of them ever convincing him to do that.
It seems really unlikely, though. It seems so dreadfully hard for them to actually be able to pull that one off.
They'd have to give him something that he wanted. Like maybe if these legal problems start to really come down on him, but they're most of them are taken at a state level. Like it'd be difficult for like a federal. I don't know. We get a New York governor, or a Republican New York governor after New York City falls apart, and then you get some kind of backdoor brokering. But it's.
I just have a really hard time. I mean, like, look, especially now that we've been down the pike of it's Mueller time, right? Like that, and look, I don't want to make fun of people who earnestly hoped that Mueller and the Mueller investigation was going to result in political action that took seriously the findings of the Mueller probe, which were serious findings. What I think, because sometimes I think people shorthand it and just go right there, and I'm not there at all. But I think it's very clear that our rule of law has broken down, and that what people who are saying it's Mueller time, and like if you're burning a candle for Mueller, that's kind of weird. It's kind of like crying for Joe Biden. Like I don't. There's like this thing that Dems do that's kind of weird to me sometimes. The Olympic people crying for Joe Biden. Like what is this? But I get why people want the rule of law to kick in at some friggin' point. It's not wrong to go Stormy Daniels. And paying off Stormy Daniels during the course of an election, at bare minimum, should result in some sort of fine or penalty or actual criminal conviction for Donald Trump, the guy who instructed the dude who got convicted of breaking election. Like, I mean, I get why people are like, when does the law kick in?
Yeah, to that, I mean, it hasn't, and there's no reason to think it will. And that's why I think that if authoritarianism doesn't lose at the ballot box, then in 5 or 10, 15 years, we're going to have a huge problem with someone like, say, Ivanka Trump.
Yes. And that's why I say, like, it's Mueller time. Oh, here comes the New York AG, or, any iteration of that. Now I'm like, guys, we got to stop. Mueller time is a thing we should all be wanting to have happen in the future, as in we should want to have a rule of law that is so strong that our politicians can't subvert it when they get in trouble. That they break the law kicks in, even if they had a really great campaign, and says, yeah, that's neat. You also absolutely withheld foreign aid to foreign countries in effort to get dirt on your campaign opponents. That's illegal, and there are criminal penalties that go with that, and you're not above that law. I absolutely 100% want a rule of law strong enough that a phrase like it's Mueller time is laughable to ignore in the future. But right now we have a rule of law that is such that a phrase like it's Mueller time is laughable to take seriously.
I think it's also, I mean, I think it's a little bit like starting to pull on a sweater, and the whole thing unravels in terms of the amount of people in long time.
Sorry, I had to get the wizard.
the long term, there I'm sure there's a bunch of petty corrupt crap rife throughout, senators' sons and all kinds of these little ticky-tack things. As soon as justice comes on such a high profile political issue, I mean, not that I wouldn't love a purge of just everybody pointing around and he did this and he did this, and it's okay, keep keep going. It's like we'll get down to the end, and then we'll fill the positions back in. But I don't necessarily think that's going to be a nice, smooth, peaceful transition, like going to go well for like administrative states, or like heaven forbid we're in the midst of something like a pandemic when it happens. I think I would love to see justice actually applied. I think it would create some
this is the problem with
bigger
corruption.
waves.
No, the problem with corruption is once it starts stacking up, you're right. It becomes like a Jenga tower where it's like, okay, you go after Hunter Biden, right?
Well, that's what I think. The Trump children were never gone after because of Hunter Biden, because of like, and not just like the laptop stuff, the Chinese aerospace stuff. Like there is
the art dealings now.
There.
Yeah, no, they I mean, the Democrats knew that they wanted Joe Biden to run as early as 2019, right? Like when the Zelensky phone calls happened, I mean, like, you know, they knew they wanted Joe Biden to run in 2018 or 2017, right? Like so they knew that was their guy. They knew that Joe Biden had baggage, and some of that baggage was Hunter Biden. And I think, to your point, you go after the Koopa kids, then all of a sudden, yeah, you do have to talk about Hunter Biden. And if you go after Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's going to be all cryy and weepy, and then maybe he can't even run for president. And then, like, God help you, you have to go to other people in your party.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. All right. So...
It's that age-old thing of you don't go after mine and I won't go after yours.
So I'm always reminded, this is about, it's getting older now as I'm getting grayer, but like, remember the DC Madam story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's one that's always stuck with me. For those of you who are a little younger, I guess I would have been 18 or 19, but there was this story involving a prostitution madam who all these politicians were seeing, who mysteriously showed up dead one day. The investigation went away, and we never found out who any of these clients were. Although, I mean, like,
imagine that.
Yeah, right. Although I think you can certainly look at like political scandals since then and kind of put some things together. It's hard to deal with corruption once you start getting, this is the problem with corruption, is as it gets stronger, as you get more of it, it gets stronger. And as it gets stronger, it's harder to unravel. And once you get to a certain point, to your point, Dan, like the idea of, we need a revolution, let's just sweep that purgative wave and sweep it all out. Like, that sounds really good and cathartic sometimes. Like, they're like, like the idea of, if I went into the Capitol and just started swinging my fist, I'd probably be punching bad people. Like right? You know,
in Minecraft.
Odds are my fist would be connecting with bad faces. And it wouldn't be a bad thing that was happening to some of these people. They had fists coming to their faces. That's neat. How do you govern a society with that? That, like, who are the people who are coming in after I dole out all these black eyes? Because it's not like I should be all of a sudden the guy who's like sitting in those seats just because I went in and punched some faces. That is a big problem. And it's because sometimes you need some continuity in the administrative state, but you also need accountability and the ability to get rid of bad apples within it too.
Yeah, well, while Trump was lying about coronavirus and the Democrats in Congress were selling off their stock options, being sold vote blue no matter who doesn't really ring as anything genuine.
Yeah, and this is what I'm saying is, so then we sweep those people all out, though. You have to replace those people. You have to replace those people with people, right? Like, I mean, on our side, it's not like, well, I'll just throw a name out here just because he keeps bringing himself in the news up on our side. Jimmy Dore. It's not like all of a sudden we make Jimmy Dore like the thought leader and shit gets way better, right? Like, yeah, you know, it actually has to be a person who is better. And that is an issue. I mean, you know, getting rid of bad people is part of it. Replacing those bad people with good and more competent people is the other piece of the puzzle.
Well, and the system has gotten so corrupt that if you're better, you're forced out.
And the more corrupt you get, the more better people you need.
Yeah.
There's something to like the money in politics incentivizes weak, strong Republicans and weak Democrats. Like you want the Democrats who are going to be squishier and the Republicans who are going to be the most venal because they're going to make you the most money.
Yeah. not on the slate, but since we brought up Dora, seeing Dora on Tucker Carlson this week, because we talked about Tucker
Oh man,
Carlson.
I didn't even.
Oh yeah, no.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, no.
Not
So,
that
no, I know, but
have
like
any love for Dora.
No, but like, yeah, he's chumming up with Tucker Carlson. So I think in addition to the Squish Dems, I think the other thing they like are like the purity guys. Yeah. Like, oh no. I'm a real because they know a guy like Jimmy Dore would be instantly easy to marginalize, and sometimes he even says things like, "Well, I'm just an idiot comedian" and stuff. So like, he's useful to a point, but you can also burn him whenever you need to burn him.
There was a lot of hay made this week over like the M4A marches, and everything that I've seen from them so far has just kind of been like 20 people showed up, and there's one person going off and speaking to a crowd of like a couple people.
And that was people like Dora are the thought leaders. And how do you deal with things like MEM4A or actual national security issues if these are the best and brightest we can produce?
Right. At a certain point, yeah, we got a lot of bad actors, but the idea that like a guy like Dore could like really understand, for example, China this week, pretty clear now that they were behind the hack of Microsoft. How's a guy like Jimmy Dore get his brain around? Like, all right, this is a nuanced situation. Microsoft is no angel. Let us not sit here and be like, Microsoft is the great company, we must defend them. At the same time, China hacking major corporations and stuff, and getting comfortable doing that is not something that you want to keep encouraged. What? At the same time, you need to find a way to work with China on key issues like if they have a virus, them actually coming out and reporting it. At the same time, you also have to work with China on issues like global warming and climate change. There's a very complicated relationship here that requires nuance, carrots, sticks, sophisticated language, veiled language, and ability to understand multiple things concurrently, nuance. And is the force the vote sort of approach really gonna like adequately understand the needs of why it's important to actually have some sort of response to the hacking other than, well, look, guys, we do need them for climate change, so we're just gonna have to let this keep happening.
Yeah, it's I mean, what Dore's response would probably depend on who we talked to last, but
or who he's attacking. Yeah.
Specifically, like, is which side's Cenk on? He's gonna have to take the opposite effect. They're.
I don't want to belabor Dore specifically.
Yeah,
it could just as easily be like Brianna Joy Gray. It was just a name that. But I saw him on Tucker Carlson when you bring up Squish Libs, and I was like, they're also starting to find some utility in guys like Dore. But yeah, that's.
Yeah. It's always frustrating to see like things that nominally touch on things that I believe in, like him, like Dore touching Carlson is like wires. Like, I don't want that concurrent vein, like that path will lead back down to like stuff that I actually care about, and siphoning or poisoning that well in a way that I really do not like. That is a gangrenous limb. Like that is.
Yeah. If people like that are controlling the conversation, it's really hard to bring up things like, hey guys, maybe China shouldn't be manufacturing the chips for all of our infrastructure. That might be really bad.
Like, you actually really have the semiconductor shortage right now, the global semiconductor shortage right now, in no small part because of Chinese actions. Like, yeah, I know. I mean, look, we need to not go to nuclear war with them, but we also need to not call things that they're doing that are obviously bad good. That does nobody any services.
We're also like, and the degree to which it's a nuanced issue, like we're boxed in by things that are completely un-China related. Like we've had like carbon scrubbing and fact like air scrubbing technologies for heavy industry, for metal manufacturing, for all of these various things for like 40 years. We haven't invested in them because, oh, that would make the steel cost a little bit more. So it's better to export. Like it's better to export the steel. Like what like it's not like having like if we had incentivized that, what 40 years of technological advancement on that technology would be doing for like heavy manufacturing here. Like it's there's all of these things that like we are a little bit stuck with China because of how there was like how the topography all ran downhill to that point.
Yeah, but at the same time, to your point, there's a lot of stuff that we can do where it's like, yeah, but we also like, I mean, we do need to work with China, but like we can also just get ahead of China, and China like impulsively needs to keep up. So like just move ahead, and if you run, they will follow. They're like trying to beat you in a race, dude. Like yeah, it's like
if we stand still, they're going to get us tied up. Like all we have to do is keep moving. I don't know. It's
yeah. How do you get these conversations to move forward when people like Joe Manchin are holding the system hostage?
That's the real question. I mean, and when it comes to the filibuster thing,
big stick.
The filibuster thing. I mean, we managed to go most of the episode talking about something else other than Manchin, but like I did throw it on here because a big problem for the Democrats now is this HR1 bill, this voting rights and voting access bill. Manchin seems to be hell-bent on killing it. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of sticking to Manchin to get him to not kill it. He's not even willing to make a carve out in the filibuster. And even more maddening, and also sort of more eyebrow raising, is he's not even in favor of something like a talking filibuster. So he's not even trying to shame people for using the 40 vote threshold as a way of killing legislation. He's just all in on helping out the Republicans. Because it'd be so I delineate this. It'd be one thing to say the filibuster is right and good, but we need a talking filibuster. That if you're gonna, use the filibuster, there should be some pain in using it because you are holding up a vote. But you should have the right to stand up there and talk to the American people and make your case and try to move public opinion and or your colleagues into your favor. To say that that's like sort of the tradition of the filibuster or whatever, it's not my argument. It's not how I feel in this world, but I understand how someone could make that argument. Manchin is straight up saying that the convention of the non-talking filibuster, which was innovated in the latter part of the 20th century, is right and good and worth preserving.
If you think that the Democratic Party is kind of a heat sink for change, and I think more and more people are seeing the octogenarians in that light, then you kind of have to arrive at the conclusion that they're fine with what Manchin is doing. In fact, they want someone doing that because they don't actually want meaningful change.
Yeah, he's a shield for the other like 8 or so Democratic senators, like your Chris Coonses. Ben Nelson not in the Senate anymore, but he would be a guy who would be like a classic, like no vote on this sort of thing. Or Blanche Lincoln, also not in the Senate anymore. She'd be a classic no vote on this. Claire McCaskill back in the day would be a classic no vote, scold, hand wringer. John Tester currently in the Senate. No, I agree. Like, look. Yeah,
Dianne Feinstein would be a no vote.
Yeah,
Feinstein wasn't there.
Yeah, right. So look, there are always going to be. I'm with you. Like the donor or the people who oppose change, and who are the donor class, own the Republican Party, right? And then they make sure that they own 50% at all times, buy up a decent chunk of the Democratic Party. And they made sure that, like, I don't even think they own really half of the Democratic Party, but they make sure that the 35-40% that they own are the ones in leadership who matter, so that your Pramila Jayapals, your Ro Khannas, your AOCs, your Bernie Sanderses, your Elizabeth Warrens are marginalized figures, because they have the Chuck Schumers of the world, the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, the Chris Coonses and the Joe Bidens of the world. They have all of the leadership level. Hakeem Jeffries. They know that when Hakeem Jeffries takes over for the notorious NDP, like he is going to go along with the Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi machine politics arrangement because he's got a nice arrangement with the donor class because they bought him. So they don't need to buy everyone in the House. Most of those House members can be actual, like, really decent liberals who you'd probably vote for in your local election. But they own the ones that matter, and that's what matters because they own the ones that matter, and then they own all of the Republican Party.
Yeah, that gets you to where you need a filibuster to pass anything. And, we're certainly not going to get rid of the filibuster because then they'd have to buy more of Congress to stop things. It's pretty simple, really.
And the other thing is, if you want to go, well, progressives can still use the filibuster. That sounds really fun and cool, except that like most of the things that Republicans want to do, they can do through budget reconciliation, which is why they love this arrangement. All those tax cut bills and everything they want to pass, those all can be done through budget reconciliation. So this paradigm is not like a somehow maybe, it's about 50-50, yeah, conservatives win a lot like this, but progressives can use this too as a tool. No, we can't. Not nearly as much.
Yeah, it's not going to be, I almost like, what would we even be holding it on for? Like to stop a legislative, like to stop a legislative alternative to going through the courts for Roe, like not that might matter for very long, but
no, I mean,
yeah, I don't know what we're trying to, like, what we're afraid is going to go through that they couldn't just do. Yeah, like you said, they couldn't just do with reconciliation.
It's always weird because it's just, to me, it's like you look at the way Republican governance works. The only things they're really interested in at this point, and Mitch McConnell's kind of fairly explicit about it, is he's interested in judges, which require 50 votes, and he's interested in like tax cuts and that sort of thing, and spending bills, both of which require 50 votes. So for McConnell, there isn't a filibuster. The filibuster really only exists for Democrats. It's so, I mean yeah.
Maybe immigration. Maybe they might do something really batshit with immigration if they had like 53 votes, and that may be like one thing worth holding on to. But I mean, like
but they even got a lot of that stuff through the federal budget with ICE and whatnot.
Yeah, they might not need to. They can do weird. I mean, if they have the presidency, they can do all kinds of weird shit with executive orders. But and then just the Congress with a Republican majority, you just don't need to enforce.
Well, and like you were saying, Dan, in this environment, like right now, the rubber meets the road in a real way with what are the Democrats actually going to be able to do about, these challenges to Roe versus Wade? Someone explain to me what the strategy is.
I mean, like, look, I think it's the strategy is you hope Clarence Thomas kicks the bucket here. I mean, seriously, like
sometime between now and November.
Yeah, right. Because lawyers for the state of Mississippi urge that the Supreme Court overturn Roe versus Wade. The state is appealing a lower court ruling that struck down a law banning most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The court agreed in May to hear the case, which will be argued in the fall, most likely in November or December. So, like, that's the timetable here. That case will be argued in November, and by spring, whenever they come back with their rulings, and it might be spring, maybe it's summer. I forget how long it takes for them to actually finish processing them. There will be some major rollback of Roe versus Wade. It is impossible to imagine this case not achieving cert at the Supreme Court. Actually, it did. It's getting argued, and
this goes to we have all acknowledged here that we all know that the DNC is going to do nothing about it. They're not going to expand the Supreme Court. They're not going to, impeach any of the Kavanaugh. They're not. So we know inherently they're going to do nothing to stop it.
So I'm being not cynical and not macabre or anything when I say that literally the best chance for Roe versus Wade between now and November, December, when they start arguing it, or when they actually do the rulings, is that the court somehow gets pared down to a 8-8, like an 8-seat court where it's 5-3 instead of 6-3. And then, and maybe only then, do you have the chance of a John Roberts splitting the court, and they have, like, you know, they essentially have no ruling, or the lower court ruling gets upheld. So essentially Roe lives to fight another day. But as we are currently cruising, barring some sort of rebalancing of the court where it gets pared down to 8 with a 5-3 majority versus a 6-3 majority, Roe versus Wade is in serious danger. And the real question is, how much will it be pared back when it gets argued before the courts here? And
it's also a little bit of a trap to keep Breyer in. Breyer can't drop out now because we won't have another liberal to replace him on any of these cases. We're stuck with Breyer at least until this slate's done.
That is actually the best argument against Breyer retire at present.
Yeah.
And
literally,
I hate him and I want him to retire. But what you are making is a rather compelling argument that, I mean, like, look, we were just talking about Joe Manchin, and let's finish out talking with him a little bit more before we close. Yeah, is it, given the way he's handling HR1, which is about the right to vote, do we really think Joe Manchin and thumbs down Kristen Sinema are going to be bulldogs fighting on behalf of us getting a new replacement for Stephen Breyer on the court, who's actually a good liberal? Or do you think that they might actually try to force the Democrats to put a pro-life liberal on the court?
Yeah. And that's bipartisan. That would be bipartisan Joe Manchin. But I think even like mid-slate, it would be, they wouldn't even, I don't think they would even hear the cases, like, unless it happened like tomorrow, like unless it happened before they start hearing any of the cases. I think that judge would recuse themselves from most of the slate.
No, Amy Coney Barrett didn't.
Oh, she didn't?
No, Amy
Coney, well, that's
yeah.
The liberal would.
Yes, right, for civility, for the sake of, for the cohesion and the civility of society and such. But yeah, no, the liberal would find that, but Coney Barrett didn't. They can get on she got on the court and was like ruling on cases real quickly, getting her resume double thick from where it had been throughout the entirety of her career. She's almost heard twice as many cases as she has had during her entire career now. Like, she lightweight is what I'm saying. So yeah, like, I mean, it's a really tricky situation. This Roe, I mean, look, Handmaid's Tale is like not my favorite show or whatever, but it's certainly one that will, I think, have increasing resonance with a subset of people here as we get closer to the end of the year, because I think Roe's in serious trouble. And to that point, though, one thing about midterms, maybe the only upside of this, is that I think it probably helps midterms. I think, that's what
I was going to bring up. I didn't want to be cynical, and I absolutely feel for all of the people who will be victimized because of it. But I think it will definitely be a rallying cry.
It will be a slap across the face of liberals, the left, who are maybe disenchanted with Joe Biden. However you feel about Joe Biden, if you don't care about Joe Biden, that's cool. The Republicans aren't done caring about you. You may not care about politics. Politics still cares about you, and you can't just like sit back and do nothing. Is that positive? I don't know. I want to end on a slightly positive note. Yeah, where can people find you on the internet?
At DL Carpenter.
At DWATG for the show. Robert, you still got the moat around your house with the piranhas and the electrified eel?
I do. I'm using my neighbor's Wi-Fi, but he has all social media blocked at the router. So
with the routers, yeah, and the server, yeah,
the routers.
You gotta have the routers. If you use your router and use server with the router onto the modem, you can go to patreon.com/DWATG. You can support there's a pinging thing that happens, and you support the show. You get the video feed and everything. It's really fantastic. And if the liberal media would just report about it more, I think you would see, you would definitely see more. So that's over at patreon.com/DWATG. Don'tWorry.tv is the homepage. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. I want to thank you all so much for listening. I want to thank you guys for being on the show. And until the next one, bye.